Have you ever looked into account-based marketing software into what it actually costs and you realize it's more than half of your marketing budget? Account-based marketing has a reputation of being this big, expensive, enterprise level thing you have to have. People think you need demand base or Sixth Sense, or you need a dedicated ABM specialist. You need custom intent data feeds, and probably a small army of SDRs. And if you work in a mid-sized company, or honestly, if you work in a lot of companies, and if you get into conversations around account-based marketing and you think, yeah, that would be great, but we just don't have the budget for it, and you just move on, here's what I want to tell you today. That is a myth. It is a flat out industry created, platform vendor sponsored myth. ABM is not a software purchase. It does not have to be one. It needs to be a strategy, and you can run it with the tools that you already have. So today we are going to demystify account-based marketing. We are going to strip it down to what it actually is, why it works so well in B2B, and exactly how you can run it without spending a dime on a platform. This is Spark Sessions, a podcast for B2B marketers who are doing the work, but just feel like the strategy, the clarity, and honestly, the credit just aren't quite there yet. I'm Lori Tyler, and I have spent more than 25 years in B2B marketing, first inside of a big global multi-billion dollar organization, really learning the craft from the ground up. And now I'm working as a fractional CMO through my firm Ignite Marketing, where I work with growth stage and mid-sized companies who are really serious about building marketing into a strategic function. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you're going to see I'm out of the office today. I have taken the pod on the road. I am in beautiful Hawaii with an incredible beach right behind me. So, why, you would ask, why would I be inside when that is my beautiful backyard? Well, I am glad you asked. It's because today's topic is one that I am genuinely fired up about because it affects so many of us. And there's just so much unnecessary confusion around it. So I want to talk about the ABCs of ABM today. So a few years ago, I was working with a company. It was well run. It was a growing B2B business, solid product, strong sales team. And they had been doing marketing, the traditional way. I'm using my air quotes, because they were casting a wide net. They were generating a bunch of leads and qualifying them as best they could, and then handing them over to sales and, kind of hoping for the best. And that was fine. It wasn't terrible, but they were really feeling the friction that a lot of companies feel. Marketing would deliver leads and sales would complain about the quality. And so marketing would deliver even more leads and just same conversation, different quarter. And so one day the CEO had said, they've been hearing a lot about ABM and asked if they should be doing it. And my answer was, you're already doing a version of it. You just aren't calling it that. Because here's the thing. Every time a salesperson says, hey, I really want to get into this account, and when marketing helps them do that, that is account-based marketing. And every time someone says, we really need to land this company, and if you work with them on creating a customized proposal or a personalized demo or, a piece of tailored content, that is ABM. The concept isn't new. The concept has existed as long as B2B sales has existed. What's new is the software industry that really grew up around it and has convinced us all that you need this six-figure platform in order to do it right. And so with this particular company, I helped them get really intentional about what they were already doing intuitively. We built a target account list. We aligned both sales and marketing around it, and we created some really targeted content and outreach. And over the next couple of quarters, their pipeline from those targeted accounts went up significantly. And it wasn't because they bought new software. It was because everyone got really intentional and really focused and worked together on it. And that is the power of account based marketing when it's done right. And it's available to every single one of us, regardless of your budget or the tools that you have. So let's really dig into this and talk about what ABM actually is, why it works so well for B2B, and the exact steps that you can take to run a really lean, no platform version of account based marketing inside of your organization. Okay, so first, what is account based marketing really? Because I think everybody has different definitions of it, different thoughts around it. Like I said, a lot of people think it's just strictly software, and that's just not the case. So let's start with the fundamentals of it because I really want us all working from the same definition. So, traditional lead generation marketing, as you know, works like a funnel. And we've talked about this before. You cast a wide net, you attract as many of your ICPs as possible at the top, and then you qualify them on the way down, and you work to nurture them into opportunities and eventually into customers. And the underlying assumption with a lot of organizations is the more leads, the better. And instead of less quantity, better quality is what we're always preaching here. And account based marketing really supports the quality model. And that flips the funnel. So instead of going wide and then narrowing, you start narrow and you identify specific companies, specific accounts that are your best fit, your highest value opportunities. And then you put all of your energy, all of your resources, and all of your creativity into engaging those accounts specifically. And the result you should expect from that are higher conversion rates and shorter sales cycles and definitely better alignment between sales and marketing dollars that are actually tied to real revenue potential, not just tied to lead volume. And that's the whole philosophy. It doesn't require a $100,000 software contract. So, many times I think mid-size B2B companies will have a pretty small addressable market because there are only so many companies that would actually buy what they're selling. And yet they're running marketing like they're trying to reach the entire internet. So when your addressable market is, maybe 500 companies or maybe 1,000, maybe even 5,000 companies, you don't need broad reach. You need really deep engagement with the right ones. And ABM is made for that. And here's the other thing. B2B buying decisions are almost never one person. The average B2B buying committee is around 6 to 10 people. And so that means you're not trying to reach a lead, you're trying to reach an account and you're trying to influence multiple people inside of it. And ABM really gives you a framework to do that very intentionally. I use a 5-step framework to build out ABM plans. The first step is to build out your target account list, and that is the foundation of everything. This is a curated list of companies that represent your very best opportunities. It's not every company in your CRM, it's not every company in your industry, but it's the specific accounts that if you landed them, you would genuinely move your business forward. And so, how do you get to that list? Well, start with your ideal customer profile. And if you've never done that exercise formally, now is definitely the time. So ask yourself, and definitely bring your sales team into this, and ask your sales team, what are the types of companies that we serve best? And you want to think about things like industry and size and geography and, um, maybe even business model. And you want to think about, what does a great customer look like? Who is the easiest to work with? Who would be the most profitable? Who would be the most likely to refer us? And then look at your existing customer base and work with your ops team to find patterns. Because I think your best clues are already in your data. And so once you have that ICP nailed down, use that as a filter. Go through your CRM, maybe also go through LinkedIn and identify 50 to maybe 200 accounts that matches that criteria, and start small. Like, use it as a test, and learn from it, and then expand. And you definitely, like I said earlier, you definitely want to bring sales into this conversation. Sales needs to be helping you build the list and validating the list, because I'm telling you, if marketing builds this in a vacuum and then tries to hand it over to sales, you've already lost half the battle, because it really has to be a joint effort from day one. You'll get so much further that way. Step two, this is where it really gets interesting, is figuring out who really matters inside of each target account. So in B2B, again, you're not trying to reach a company. You are trying to reach the people inside of the company who really influence and make the buying decisions. And for most B2B products and services, that is definitely more than one person. There's an economic buyer. That's the person who actually signs the contract. There's often a champion. That's the person who loves you and the person who's really working to sell you internally. And then obviously there's influencers, there's evaluators. Those are the people who will actually use your product or manage the implementation or review it to make sure there's a technical fit. And a lot of times there's blockers and there's gatekeepers. And, those are the people who just have concerns, or maybe they have other priorities. And your job then is to understand who these people are, specifically at these target accounts, and to make sure you're engaging with all of them, not just the ones who fill out your form. And I think LinkedIn is probably your best free tool for this. So go there, go to a target account's LinkedIn page and look who works there, and find the titles that really matter and connect with them and follow their content and understand, what are they talking about? What do they really care about? And that intelligence is now going to help inform everything you do in the rest of these steps. Okay, so then step 3 is where most people think that ABM gets really expensive, because they think that It's the personalization aspect that really requires a lot of money and a tool. It doesn't. So with ABM, there are actually three tiers. And I think the personalization level will then scale with the value of each account. So tier one, those are your most strategic, your highest value accounts. And maybe there's, you know, 10 to 20 of those. And for those, you want to do really highly personalized outreach. So think about custom landing pages and personalized emails and just very tailored messaging and maybe even a piece of custom content or a one-to-one event. Just think about high effort, high reward. And then tier two, your next tier of accounts, and maybe that's 50 to 100 companies. Here's where you can do some cluster personalization. So you want to segment those companies by industry, by use case, maybe by pain point, and create content that speaks specifically to each of those clusters. So maybe it's a healthcare vertical one pager, maybe it's a manufacturing case study. It needs to be content that feels very personal, but it doesn't have to be built from scratch for each account. Tier three is now you go the broadest. This is a broader list of companies that still fit your ICP, but they're not going to get the heavy lift. They're going to get your standard targeted campaigns, but they're still going to be much more focused than, a spray and pray approach because you're only going to be running them to the companies in your ABM, the ones that actually match your profile. And so the beauty of this tiering model is that it's scalable. You don't have to go all in on tier one level of personalization for every single account. And that's a lot of times what the software wants you to do. You really just need to start there and start with your top 10. And again, test and learn, figure out what works, and then scale. So with this level of personalization, what does that actually look like without a platform? And there's a bunch of things that you can do that cost almost nothing. So you could have a sales rep sending a personalized LinkedIn message. You give them the messaging, have it reference something that's happening in that person's world. Maybe it's something that they posted about or that their company posted about. It could be a new product launch or, a specific comment that they made about something or a known challenge that their company is navigating. That's all ABM. You could create a one-page case study for a specific industry and then make sure that every prospect in that industry receives it at the right moment in your sales cycle within your target accounts. That's also ABM. You could create a landing page for a specific account that speaks directly to their situation and you send that to your champions. That is ABM. And none of those things requires a platform. They just require your own creativity. It requires coordination and it requires your clear list of who you're targeting. So step four now, and this is where ABM, I think, really separates itself from traditional marketing. And this is the part too that I think people tend to miss when they're trying to do ABM without the platform. ABM works because it's multi-channel and it's coordinated. You're not running one campaign and hoping that somebody sees it. You're showing up in multiple places at once, and you're being really consistent, and you're bringing relevant messages so that when your target account is ready to buy, you're already going to feel familiar to them. So, what does this look like in practice without fancy software? LinkedIn organic and paid, that can be one of your most powerful ABM channels. You can run really targeted sponsored content campaigns by company name. Go into LinkedIn, go to Campaign Manager, create a company list, upload it, and then target them directly. You don't need a sixth sense for that. LinkedIn actually gives you account targeting natively. It's probably one of the best things, if not the best thing about LinkedIn, in my opinion. And that is, I think, genuinely one of the most underused features in B2B marketing. Email sequences are another one. You can coordinate with sales on a sequence outreach that goes to the key contacts at your target accounts. You can create the content and then sales can do the sending. But the key is to really make sure that each touch feels relevant and not the generic messages that, we sometimes send to everybody. Content and thought leadership is another big one. Create content that really speaks directly to the pain points or that answers the questions of your target accounts. And then get that content in front of them. Get it in front of them through LinkedIn, through email, through sales conversations, through a landing page. Wherever you can get it in front of them, you want to get that consistency of message and that consistency of touch. Webinars and events. I love doing these. I think it's fantastic for ABM. You can invite your contacts to a VIP webinar or a really small group event. Maybe it's a virtual roundtable and it's just 10, 12, 15 people from your tier one accounts. And that can be really incredible because I think people remember being invited to something that feels very exclusive. And it's the coordination between all of these communications and all of these channels that's really the magic in all of this. It's not any one tactic. It's the consistency. It's the relevant targeted focus and presence across these multiple touch points that are now happening over time, and all of that in unison starts to create this like, oh yeah, I keep seeing them. And that's what makes accounts start to eventually pay attention and want to reach out to you. They're starting to get familiar. It takes doing this over and over again. It takes that consistency of message. And so the last step 5, is about really changing how marketing and sales measure success together when you're doing ABM. Because in traditional marketing, we sometimes celebrate when somebody fills out a form, like that's a lead, success. And in ABM, we measure account engagements. So we're asking, are we making progress with this account? Are more people at this company engaging with our content? Are we having conversations with multiple stakeholders at this account? And is this account moving closer to a conversation or a demo or, ideally a proposal? And that's a really important shift because it changes the conversation between marketing and sales. Instead of marketing saying, we generated 50 leads this month, marketing can say, yeah, we're seeing really strong engagement from, 8 of our top 20 accounts. And then say, and 3 of them have had multiple contacts engaging with our content. And here's what we know about where each account stands. And that is a very different conversation. And that is a conversation that sales wants to be in with you. And you can also track all of this without a platform. Some people are using spreadsheets, and that's okay. It's an okay place to start. It's not ideal. Ideally, your goal should be that everything's in your CRM. So you want to work with whoever in your organization has been helping you set up campaign attribution. Because for each target account, you want to be able to generate a report right out of Salesforce of which contacts have engaged and what content they're seeing. And if your sales team is really well trained, hopefully, on what to put in the CRM, you should also have what conversations have happened and where they are in the buying journey. Sales is going to have to update it after every touch point, and marketing will update it as the campaign keeps progressing and running. And then it becomes this shared view of account health. Is it as automated as a proper ABM platform? No, but it gives you at least 80% of the value at 0% of the cost. And when you get to the point where you've proven the model and you're maybe ready to invest in tooling, you'll know exactly what you need to get and exactly what you need. And you won't get sucked into feeling like you have to buy the most expensive ABM with all these capabilities and all these bells and whistles that you probably don't need. So let's just then do a quick tooling inventory of the tools that do support a platform-free ABM, because you probably have most of these. So first of all, we've talked about it. LinkedIn, terrific resource. We talked about it for research, for connection, for organic content, and for company targeted ads. Fantastic. Your CRM obviously is hugely important, whether that's HubSpot, Salesforce, whatever you have, whatever you use. You need to be tracking the named accounts and the context in them and their level of engagement. Your email platform, everybody already has one. You'll be using it for email sequences, for your personalized campaigns, for your nurture emails as part of this. In your website, obviously, you can be setting up custom landing pages. You can customize it by segment or even by company if you want to get really fancy. And again, maybe a simple spreadsheet if that's where you need to start. Use it for your account list and the mapping of your different engagement approaches. Just find your starting point and start there. And that's it. You can have a really solid ABM program with just that stack. The platforms, yes, they do add scale, they do add automation, but the strategy, the targeting, and even the personalization and the coordination, that's all you. So just watch out, I would say, for a couple of things as you're working to get this set up. Like, don't make your account list too big. If you try to do ABM with 500 accounts on day one, you're going to be spreading yourself way too thin, and it's not going to feel like ABM anymore. It's just going to feel like your regular marketing with a bunch of extra steps. So start with those 50 accounts and test the model, improve the model, and then grow. And again, make sure you're doing this with your sales team. This is a must. If marketing is trying to run ABM campaigns with a list of accounts and sales doesn't know about it, you are wasting your time and your effort. And frankly, you're going to end up pissing a lot of people off. So don't do that. Sales and marketing have to be working on the same accounts at the same time with the same message. Stay really tight on what's happening. And I would encourage you to even just set up a quick, weekly check in with your sales team just on this campaign and focus on your top accounts and just make sure you're staying really tightly aligned. And always just keep sight of the actual goal, which is starting conversations and moving accounts toward a buying decision. ABM is not a brand awareness exercise. Every piece of content, every touch point, every message should really be designed to move an account forward. And you just have to have some patience. That doesn't cost a thing. ABM will take longer to show results than really broad based lead gen because you're building relationships with specific accounts. You're not throwing a net and hoping something bites. So I would say give yourself at least a full quarter, maybe two, probably one quarter, and then evaluate results. And I think you'll see that the payoff is definitely going to be worth it. Okay, so let's bring all this home. Account based marketing, it's not a software product. It is a strategy, and it is a strategy that is 100% accessible to you right now with the tools that you already have. Because the core of ABM is actually crazy simple. You know who you want to win, you understand who matters in those companies, and you show up for them in a way that's relevant and consistent. And you do it in coordination with your sales team. You don't need demand based to do that. You need clarity and focus and a commitment to doing fewer things better. So, your action item for this week: build a starter target account list and sit down with your sales team and look at your ICP and identify those 25 to 50 companies that represent your best fit, highest value opportunities. And once you have that list, everything else that we talked about today becomes possible. So, thank you for listening. If you found this episode at all helpful, and if you heard something that you can actually use, the biggest thing that you can do to support me and Spark Sessions is to leave a review. I would so appreciate that. And I am Lori Tyler. This has been Spark Sessions, and I will see you next time.